Hey, welcome back to the channel. It's Jake by day. This is Jacob. I've got a slightly easier video today because I just need a little bit of a break, but oh no. Yeah, this has gotta go. Let's do that now.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, how are you today?
Not too bad.
Can I please have a takeout large cinnamon dolce latte, please?
Half sandwich. What's your seat?
A tad bit longer than what I was wanting, but quite happy. Hi. Oh, I'm done. She just knocked over my lighting. Alrighty, so that's all done and dusted. I got my haircut. It looks, I think, a lot better than the shaggy hair did before. I did want longer hair for a little bit. I wanted to try it out, but I did keep this a little bit longer than I normally would, but now it was time for it to go. And now it's time to start the video in earnest. So I did want to do something a little bit easier today. I thought it would be fun to introduce you guys to a brand new world that I've been creating. My friends and I, we've been going through a D&D campaign. That has been wicked fun. Travis, the guy who runs it, he's incredible. I don't know how he's able to get this all done every week, but it has really inspired me to create my own world, and I want to take you through it today, at least as much as I've created so far, some of the ideas I have for it, all that sort of stuff. So let me set up the overlay and we'll begin. I just recorded all of this video and I realized afterwards that the audio quality was horrible because I essentially had two mics working at the same time. You live and learn. So getting into this world, it is called the region of Ru'aan, as you can see. That may be subject to change because the astute among you, or the nerds among you, or the losers among you may have watched a certain Minecraft YouTube series called Minecraft Diaries by Afmao. That is the name of the region that she called hers. It definitely will change. I don't want to straight out copy, but for the time being, that's going to be the name that I'm going to go with. So the first thing I'm going to do is very quickly just name the regions, and then we'll give some more details about them, their political structures, some of the backstory and economies, things that I find important. So we have the Mirthrock Confederation here. So this is a collection of different races. We'll talk about those more, but essentially they found that with the growing power structures throughout this region, it was better, they'd have more political might if they all banded together rather than remaining separate. We also have Viola. This is the land of the wild. There's lots of creatures here that are not native to the rest of the continent, and they're very untamed. There's not a lot of civilized culture going on here. We then have Zenithia, the realm of the God King. Religion is a very important thing in this continent. For the most part, it's very ubiquitous in terms of all following the same religion, headed by the God King who resides in this capital city of Zenithia. They're probably the most populous and economically powerful unit of this whole continent. We then have Al Orzol, the Dynasty of the Wind. Lots of different races here, as you can see, ginormous desert region. They very much honor and respect the wind. It's a very important part of their culture. And then moving on to Haraval up here. This is the Legion of the North, very militaristic peoples. This is probably the region that I've given the least thought into so far, so I do have to spend some time thinking what makes these people unique. Moving down to this Triumph Archipelago, I also think that name is up for change. I just couldn't really think of something back when I was working on this. What's interesting about this area is that they were formerly a pirate's cove. They kind of struck a deal with Zenithia. They were able to gain autonomy in exchange for no longer being pirates. So they very much facilitate trade now instead. And finally, we have the Corrupted. This used to be its very own continent. If you were to look at the rest of this, imagine that this is like the North Pole, and then if it were a globe, and this would be the South Pole, connected by a land bridge here. They used to be their own fully fledged continent with regions not too dissimilar from these, but something happened about 200 years ago. I'll leave it, I don't want to spoil too much, but something happened about 200 years ago, and now the land is completely corrupted. They don't think anyone can live there anymore, and as you can see, it is slowly starting to make its way into the rest of the region. So that will be a very important plot point. So before we go any farther, I do want to get into some generic details about the world, and also about how I plan on making this session. This is a region that 200 years ago was a lot more feudal. There was a lot more wars going on. And as of late, I would say that they're almost going through a renaissance. They are embracing open borders and trade. You know, they become a lot more economically reliant on one another for their goods and services. And in doing so, they have made the average person a lot more wealthy, a lot more prosperous, but there is some discontent amongst the ruling class because they are finding that their power level is diminishing. There's ideas of, you know, abandoning the religion that is prominent on this island. Science and technology is taking over, not necessarily replacing magic, but becoming to the point where it's almost to the same standing. So it's a world of change. That'll be a very important topic for my campaign. The world is changing, and there is some discontent with that. There's going to be some instability when it comes to that. And there's going to be some people that don't want to see that change, and there'll be some people that do want to see that change. And I think it'll be the choice of the players where they want to go. In terms of the campaign itself, it will be very story-based. I want to make this a cinematic experience in a way. That's not to say that there won't be a choose-your-own-adventure sort of idea, but I really want to heavily guide the players along the story that I want to tell. I also plan on making the characters, the people that do play this, important in a way. They will have important story elements behind them, and so the characters, I am going to assume that they are adept. So once per session, they may be able to, if they were to describe exactly how they'd be doing it or what gave them the motivation to do it, they could potentially gain advantage on one roll per session of their choice, but they'd have to actually describe, you know, seeing my friend slain in combat gave me a moment of inspiration. I would need to find out how to actually structure that so that it's fair and doesn't feel like a cop-out, and that people don't feel like it's too easy. That's an overview of Ru'aan. The last thing that I want to get into real quick is this ginormous mountain found right in the center of the region. You see that this capital of Zenithia is nudged right against the mountain. This is truly ginormous. If you've ever heard of Olympus Mons on Mars, like 10 kilometers high, it's truly ginormous, and this picture isn't even doing it justice. I imagine it being steeper, and at the top it's very much like a plateau. We're its own continent at the very top. As part of the religion of this region, About 200 years ago, before this corruption, gods walked among men. They lived all throughout the region. But as this corruption started to spread, all the gods disappeared up onto this mountain peak and haven't been seen for 200 years. Some people don't believe in the gods anymore. They think that they were just ordinary men who were skilled at magic. But then the standard order says that, here found in Zenithia, that they do in fact exist. And there is an important event that happens every year. It's called the Ascension of the God King. So there's a high priest, the ruler of Zenithia, who every year goes out to this waterfall and ascends to be with the gods for a day. And many people all throughout the region, followers and believers and political pundits and all that sort of thing, they will all come to spectate that. Generally that's done in the spectator region here in the capital, as well as on this ginormous bridge that was specially built for the occasion. When the players will be starting, it is a very, very important event that year in particular, because the old king, who was a good king and helped facilitate over the last 200 years all of the progress that has happened in this region, he is now dead. And the new king, this is his first ascension, so a very important deal. Many more people than would normally be arriving in the city are going there, and that is where the story is probably going to start. These are going to be a bunch of people who have all come to witness the ascension of the new God King. To get into the world a little bit more, I want to start with the Mirthrock Confederation. And again, Mirthrock is a collection of different races that have all come together to kind of increase their political power. In general, Mirthrock is a more raw commodity based society and economy. So we're going to start all the way up here. As a baseline, it's important to know that humans, they have a very large diaspora all throughout this continent. You'll be able to find human settlements no matter where you go, interspersed amongst the more native populations. So starting off in this plains up here, this is where human traders exist with the people that live within. If you've played Hearthstone, these people are very similar to Naga. They live within this salty lake. There is a mountain chain that encapsulates them, and it has no outflow to the ocean. So it's a very salty lake. These Naga people, they live there. They are the most discontent with the state of the Mirthrock Confederation. They are very prideful. They think that they would do better without them, but they remain for now. But it is a point of political contention. If we were to move down here, we have one of the two regions where elves exist. But these elves in particular, they are kind of the richest area of Mirthrock. What they tend to do is they'll take the raw materials that all these other places produce and they transform them into higher order goods, whether that be ornaments and garments and furniture and these sorts of things. They take these resources and upsell them. That has led to some amounts of political contention between the other factions within Mirthrock, because they are not particularly happy that they are selling their goods at a marked up price. They would rather receive a higher commission for obtaining those goods. So there's always going to be a little bit of political strife here. Over in this corner, this is one of the many regions where giants exist within this area. They're secluded from the rest of Mirthrock. They pretty exclusively trade with the elves, who the elves then re-export things out. They are mainly mining, very not men of many words, right? But they iron ore especially, they are mining for that, and then they're giving it to the elves, who would either make that into weaponry or then re-export it out to the rest of the world. If we move farther down, this area is kind of one of the most melting pot regions of Ru'aan. There's a lot of basic industry that goes on here, whether that be agriculture, definitely forestry, nothing much else. Again, basic industries. However, it is a melting pot because a lot of people, if they want to move into Mirthrock, this is the area that they're going to be moving into. If creatures that live in Viola become more sentient or decide that they want to embark into a larger society, this is the most common place that they're going to enter from. So, for instance, there is a race of creatures called the Aarakocra, bird people. They may fly over, and they're going to enter society from here. Finally, this region of Mirthrock, I like to think of them as like a dwarf/human hybrid. They are also important for a lot of mining. However, they do have not only this iron ore, some of the more valuable minerals as well. And they specialize in producing some of the best weapons that you can find all throughout Ru'aan. Okay, so moving on to Zenithia. Again, this is the realm of the God King. Very important, kind of the political capital. whenever there's a conference, they're usually meeting up in the capital Zenithia, talking about plans for the region and everything. They're also the most populous. As you can see, it's very human dominated. I'd say they're probably the second most melting pot of a region just because they're so economically important. But the vast majority of people that live here would be the humans. This is probably where the race had their origins. And as you can see, they're not necessarily lacking natural resources. They are very advanced in terms of their extracting potential and all that. And even this capital city was founded on a gold reserve that has since dried up in this large mountain. You can see that they have very fertile lands, lots of agriculture that goes on here, so they can support a very large population, and they're kind of the center of, some of these new age ideals like banking and not so much philosophy, but universities, education, magic training, all these sorts of things. Definitely the most powerful entity within this region. Back to our Zol, this is the Dynasty of the Wind. They have a very high amount of respect for the wind. They don't necessarily see it so much as a religion, but kind of like a folklore. It's like breathing life into things. They're also pretty diverse here. They have a whole host of different kind of creatures and sentient beings that live here. So for instance, there are wind elementals that reside here. There's scarabs and human hybrids. There is a lot of interbreeding amongst all the races. The gene pool is very fluid, so you can interbreed with any other race and create a hybrid. I think that in terms of economics, what I've decided so far, very much they have a lot of gold reserves, lots of glass. They produce different sorts of weaponry. Specifically in terms of education and industry, they have made the most strides as of late. They have started to very much move away from religion and embraced philosophy and science and engineering. This is a ginormous project here that has been undertaken over the last 200 years. Essentially, I didn't get into this, but this is a ginormous, continuously going windstorm that sweeps over this entire area. What they've been able to do is use that windstorm that has like a suction in the middle to draw water all the way from the ocean, and along the way they desalinated it, not using their science and technology, and it essentially allowed millions of people and creatures to live in this otherwise inhospitable desert. So they're making great strides forward in that direction. You can see there's kind of this Great Plains. I do plan on adding more rivers here, kind of making this more like a Nile Delta. There's also this jungle along the coast. I imagine that Mifwa, or like cat people, live in here with their own kind of separate culture, but still subservient to the ruling class within this main capital city here. Again, I think I touched for the most part on the Triumph Archipelago, most of the things that I wanted to say, but again, Pirates Cove, now they gain political autonomy. They're no longer at war with all the other regions that they were previously stealing from. They largely operate as the biggest merchant fleet. They have convoys that other regions can pay them to help them move their goods safely, so that's largely what they do now. But with that said, there were a large amount of the people that lived here that were not very fond of becoming a merchant guild. They liked their job as pirates. So those people were able to move out, and now somewhere, perhaps even hidden on this map, the pirates still remain. Obviously not as much of an issue as it was before when all the people that lived here were pirates, but pirates definitely still do exist. Thieves exist, all these sorts of things. There's Thieves Guild all throughout the region. And as we said, finally, we're moving on to Haraval. This is the Legion of the North. Again, this is the place that I've given the least amount of consideration to so far, but I do know some basic facts about it. First off, in this region around the base of the mountain, this is much more mesa-like, so I imagine there's things like orthoworms and lots of mines and underground communities, those sorts of things. The general populace here is going to be of the Quillbore or like orc variety. I haven't fully decided yet. Interesting thing about Haraval is that Haraval has always been kind of disconnected from the rest of the region, and in those previous 200 years, Haraval and Zenithia were always at war. But the Good King, in an effort to bring peace to the continent, signed peace treaties with Haraval, and as part of this peace treaty with Haraval, they agreed to make the next heir of Zenithia be Haravalian. The next high priest will be from this region. So when we start off the story, as I said, the new God King who's ascending is an orc-human hybrid from this royal family. In terms of their economy, they've definitely opened up within the last 100 years or so, but they are still the most secluded from everyone else, very weary of opening their borders. For the most part, they still act as mercenaries for hire. They produce high-quality weapons, lumber, mining, all those sorts of basic industries otherwise. They do have to import a lot of their food, or at least as their population has grown, as they've opened up trade, they've begun to do that. Haravalian ships are regarded as the most battle-hardy, right? Very well-made, constructed ships, good for battle. So they sometimes also have a scheme to export their made ships elsewhere. I talked about Viola a bit. Again, lots of different amounts of creatures that live here. No real society, like, for instance, I said those air crocrans, they may have colonies and such, but they're definitely not as civilized as the rest of the region. But there may be individuals that, they want a more steady life, and they're a bit more sentient or smarter than their peers, and they will make their way somehow to the rest of the region. However, there are some issues, like different regions. Mirthrock is the forefront, the most liberal area. They've banned slavery, but the Merchants Guild still has an issue where they will essentially steal people from Viola and force them into working on their ships and stuff like that. So that is an issue that Zenithia is currently trying to broker, because everyone has different opinions on that. That's one of the political ideas that I have. finally, we're moving on to the corrupted. I don't want to make this video too long. And specifically here, I have a lot of ideas about how this will work, but one, it will have some important plot points, so I don't want to spoil too much, but also, I haven't decided necessarily which direction I'm going to go. There's a lot of different things that I can do with this, so in the coming weeks and months, I will get back to you with a more solid answer about what the corrupted is. I just realized that I forgot to talk about this northerly region. Again, it doesn't actually have any sort of name behind it. It's just a no man's land. There are barbarians that live here, very hardy people that constantly kind of make their way down. They might attack Marvel, which is part of the reason why they're very militaristic, because even though the world has become a lot more open and, you know, trade, mercantile, they still get attacked on the regular, so they always have to be ready. Up here, you wouldn't have much reason to come here unless you wanted an adventure. This is probably where some of the highest level battles you're going to have as an adventurer. So there's things like ice giants and ice drakes and all those sorts of things that would be existing here, but otherwise it's extremely inhospitable. I don't want to make this video too long. It's been a lot of fun talking about it, and I'm sure I could go on for days and days and days about all the little intricacies of this world, and I haven't even thought out like even a quarter of all the things that I need to actually get this world up and running, but I am very happy to be able to share this with you. I do want to start getting the ball rolling on this a bit. I will definitely be recording the gameplay that we eventually get to once we have a set schedule and a set number of players and all that sort of thing. So definitely look forward to that. I hope that this is something that the majority of you are interested in. Even if you're not, I'll probably still be releasing it because it is something that's important to me, but hopefully you enjoyed learning about this world that I've created, and I will definitely be keeping you updated. Yeah, otherwise, have a good day, like, subscribe, all that sort of fun stuff, and bye!